Okay, we're recording. All right. So last week's class, I recorded for the first time, and I checked it out, and the recording is quite nice. They are available on BlueJeans, but I don't know if it's a public link. I don't think so. I'll look into what to do with those. I put a link in the document that Chat shared with everyone. Yeah, I'll see about it. Maybe we can move them somewhere, but the files are quite big. So today I wanted to discuss GitLab 8, the new release, which is really important and really nice. And as we wrote in a blog post, it's the biggest release we've ever done. And it actually is, and there's really good reasons for that, which I will tell you in a bit. And if there's time left and everyone is still interested, I thought we could talk a little bit about protocols and specifically what is LDAP and maybe even talk about SSH and HTTPS. But let's start with GitLab 8. I'll take my notes here. So we say that GitLab 8 is the biggest release we've ever done. And we said it with every release, which is a pretty good idea because every release we improve things. But GitLab 8 in particular, we did something which no one really has done before, at least not in the way that we did it. So we have GitLab, our standard product, and for a long time we had GitLab CI next to it. And for GitLab, we have the competitors GitHub and Bitbucket, but GitLab CI, a continuous integration service, is actually it's a service that is aligned with what we do, but it is something completely different, and it has different competitors like Travis and Circle CI and many others. And what we did is we put them together and made it into a single product, which is a really big deal because we're the first to really do this, minus maybe some small alternatives. And well, GitHub and Bitbucket don't have this, and the way that they do it is the way that we did it before as well, where you offer integrations into your product, but it's not actually a single product. I'm going to show you, and then I will explain also what it does, which is easier to see to understand when you see it. So I'll share my screen again. Okay. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thanks. All right, let's go to. So here you're looking at dev.gitlab.org, which runs the latest GitLab version. It runs actually a little bit later version and is currently available, but you won't see a lot of differences. So where you're looking at GitLab in the past, we didn't have this link here, and this is actually where the integration of CI is right now. I will show you. So GitLab CI is a continuous integration service or server, and what it does, I think I touched upon it last time, is that it runs the tests that you have. So whenever you're programming, you're working in really complex applications. There are many files, and many people make many different changes to that. And to see whether a change affects a different part in the application, that is really hard to see by hand and to just look yourself. You can't, every time that you make a change, click through the entire application and see whether that change affected anything in particular. So what people started to do is they started to write tests, and they basically do in code what you would otherwise do by hand. Test whether a certain feature is still working and still working in the way that you want it to work. And this is a really powerful paradigm, and we talk about test-driven development, where you first write a test for something that you want to be or happen in your application. It fails, and next you write the actual code until the test passes. So we do this at GitLab as well, meaning that whenever you add a new feature, you first write a test, see if they fail, they should, and then you write the feature until the test passes. Now these tests, what we do is we run them all the time. So whenever there's a new change coming into GitLab, meaning a new commit on master or on any other branch, we automatically run the tests. And the running of the test, it has to happen. For one, it can be really intensive for the computer. So it has to happen in a separate environment. There's other reasons for this, for instance, because you cannot run each application in every environment. You have certain dependencies. So what a continuous integration service does, such as GitLab CI, is it can take those tests and run them for you. And not only that, it can do it in parallel and over multiple machines so that they get ran really fast and you don't have to sit around waiting for them, and nor are they in your way. So what we did is by integrating GitLab CI, the part that runs your tests, into GitLab, we created this workflow where you first work together in GitLab, and then the tests that get run are also in GitLab. And this is extremely nice for everyone working on any kind of code, because you have everything in one place. And this is what it looks like. And I should say another important thing is that nowadays people do continuous integration and continuous deployment, where after all your tests have succeeded, you actually deploy the changes that you made. And this is also something you could do with GitLab CI. So in GitLab 8.0, we added a link here on the dashboard that says continuous integration. And there you see this screen. And this is basically all the projects that you have access to and the status of the latest build that they did. Meaning, if someone made a change, made a new commit, for instance, on the GitLab CE project, which is here called GitLab HQ, you'll see here the latest commit. You'll see that it reports a success. That means the latest commit, all the tests passed. So let's have a look at it. So here you're looking at the actual commits, and you see that here in the left bar, this changed, and this is actually GitLab CI now that you're looking at. And you see here all the commits that have been made recently and the status of them. We can look at specific branches, for instance, for a certain release. And we can even look at the commit. And if we look at the commit, this is basically what happens. So let's say I push a change to GitLab. We set up GitLab CI such that it will pick up the fact that a commit is made. Actually, that's something that GitLab CI does for you. And then it runs a bunch of scripts, or as we call them, builds. And this is just for a single commit. So this is this specific commit made by Douwe, made today. And what happened is that the moment he pushed that commit, all these builds started running. And GitLab CI automatically creates these builds. So we configured beforehand what it has to do. It then creates these builds and it can run them in parallel. And these builds do different things. For instance, most of these are tests. Some of these test code quality and security things. I'll show you one to have a look at it. And this is basically what it looks like. So what GitLab CI actually does in practice is it grabs a little virtual machine, a little server, and it runs the script that we gave it. And each green line you see here is actually one of the things that gets executed. So you run a certain command, and then there's a lot of output. We run some other commands, there's more output. And at the end of the line, we run some tests. And that's basically what CI does. And the big deal is that we now integrated it in GitLab. This was the first step, meaning we only put the two things together, but they're still sort of separate in that we have this whole GitLab CI interface, which is separate from the rest of GitLab. But with the next release, what we're going to do is we're going to actually weave this all the way into GitLab. So rather that you have completely separate screens and separate views for GitLab CI, you actually have everything in GitLab. So you just go to a project and there's all the information that you need rather than you go through the GitLab CI interface. So some things because my laptop is taking off. Are there any questions about this?
So yeah, I'll jump in, just focus on your last part, some of these benefits. So kind of like the so what or why the client should care. So what I heard is they don't need to go into two different systems. So right now it's two different interfaces, and soon it'll be one. But if they're using a different CI tool, they'd have to go into two different systems. So that's really time savings. Is that the benefit?
That's the first most obvious benefit. The second is that right now that's not completely the case, but we will be able to offer features that others can't because it's fully weaved in. But yeah, the first one is that you do not have to go to a different application. It looks different, it feels different, it works different, on a different domain, etc. So yeah, that's the first advantage of this integration.
And then the other one I love clarification on is this whole concept of continuous testing. Is that like the focus of the value proposition really quality of work? So we're ensuring that the quality of work is there?
Yeah, and this is not a thing that we invented or something very new. This is an accepted thing that pretty much all software development nowadays has accepted in more or less way. So the testing everyone does, the part where everything is automated and where you have a single, the continuous integration or continuous deployment, that is something that we try to promote, and that is something that GitLab CI makes possible. And the advantage of that is code quality, stability, security. You become much more productive because you can safely make big changes because you see how it reflects on the rest of the project. So the more and the better you hold on to these testing practices, or test-driven practices as we call them, the more confident you can be in your development, and your developers will be more confident, etc., etc. So the influence of this is really, really strong. So the reason to use these kind of tools is very, very obvious.
And then the last one, I'm assuming, is price. So it's included in GitLab. And if they're using a different CI tool, they're going to pay for that, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, there's no difference between Community Edition and Enterprise Edition in terms of GitLab CI. In the future, we might add features to GitLab CI only for Enterprise. But yeah, other tools you have to pay for, and they are expensive. CI tools are expensive because computing power is expensive, which you need a lot. And the way we set it up with GitLab is that now you have GitLab, and your tests are being ran in separate machines, separate VMs. And it's up to you how you configure them and how many you configure them. And it can all be in your own infrastructure. And we do not limit that, for instance, which some of the competitors do. So this is, the GitLab CI is also in that regard by far the cheapest solution.
Okay.
Any other questions about this? All right. So that's the main feature of.
Actually, I do have a question. It's more on adoption. Do we know how many users are using our CI tool?
No, we do not have a good idea. It's nowhere near the amount of people that are using GitLab itself. There are several reasons for that. For a long time, GitLab CI was not as mature as it's becoming now. Right now, we have a lot of features, and most of the important features, minus one or two. But before that, it was not as mature, and competitors offered better solutions. Another reason is that we don't market it as strong. And a third reason is that the market, especially enterprise companies, are all settled on a specific solution, and usually they use Jenkins. And Jenkins is not a great tool to use, but once you have everything set up, it works. And it often takes a lot of work to get something like this set up. And it's all integrated in all your workflows, as will GitLab CI be eventually. But that makes it a little bit harder to transition, where with GitLab, the transition is obvious because you're going from SVN to something completely different. So you have to change tools, so might as well do GitLab, while Jenkins can still do whatever you want it to do nowadays, even though it's not as good as a tool.
Anybody else? Questions?
Okay, if there's no more questions, then I'll move on to the next new feature of GitLab 8. which is a small one, but it's nice because you also get to see some other parts of GitLab that I have not even touched upon yet. So what you're looking at now is my own little server where I test the new releases of GitLab. And you're looking at a project, which I called Apple Watch 2. And what you're seeing right now is the dashboard of a project. And in the dashboard of a project, it's basically for whoever visits this project to get an idea of what it is about, and do some of the most typical things when you enter a project that maybe you're not working on or maybe you are working on. So on top you see you can put a little logo, for instance, you see the name, etc. You see a bunch of buttons here, and I'll go through all of them, with this one being the only one that is new, the global one. The start button allows you to bookmark repository. So if you want to only see a subset, for instance, on your dashboard of GitLab, you can use star, and then whenever you go here, you see only your start projects, versus your project where you see all the projects that you're a member of, which is often hundreds. So that's the first one. Forking is whenever you clone a repository in its entirety and then work from there. We'll get on this in a later session, but this is the basic premise. And this is, for instance, what you use if there's a public project that you would like to contribute on, but you have no rights to. So instead of editing in that project where you don't have permission to, you create an entire copy, make your changes there, and then try to merge them back into the original project. And forking is, for instance, the way that most people work with GitHub, where everyone is encouraged to fork a project rather than to push branches to the same repository. If you want to download the repository, you can do that. And then with GitLab 8, we introduced this new button. And it's just a quick way to change the setting that already existed. And what it does is it allows you to change notifications on a project. So in GitLab, whenever there's a change, the general way of saying is that whenever there's a change that is relevant to you, we'll give you a notification. And a notification in GitLab is always in the form of email. There are different levels that you can set for notifications. Global means that it takes the setting that you set for all your projects, which is something you can configure in your profile. And then you can choose between the different levels. I must be honest, I don't know the difference between watch and participate. Oh yeah, I know. If you set a notification to watch, you will get a notification for everything that happens in the project. So if there's a change, you will get an email about it. If there's a comment by someone, a new issue, a new merge request, you'll get an email about it. This seems like crazy a lot, but if you're a maintainer of a project, especially a smaller project, meaning you are the one that makes all the decisions on new features, on things that are coming in, and you have to always be replying to things, this is what you want to activate. You'll get a lot of spam of any activity that happens, but you will be in full control of your repository. The default for most people is to set the notification level to participate. And to participate means that if you are active somewhere, for instance, if you created an issue and someone comments on that, because you created it, you're active in that issue, and you will get a notification if your notification level is set to participate. Same with if you created a merge request or a specific commit that you made, GitLab sees, for instance, if Sietse decides to comment on one of my commits, then GitLab sees, oh, Job made this commit, his participation level is set to, his notification level is set to participate, so we'll send them an email. And this is what is the default for everyone, for all projects. And this is what in 90% of the cases you'll be using and you should be using. It makes that you don't miss anything. The only thing is that if you're really active in a lot of different issues on really big public repositories like our own, like GitLab CE, you will get a lot of email. in that case, you can choose to unsubscribe from the issue, etc. Then disabled, of course, turns off all notifications. On mention is a really nice one. And it does exactly what you think it does. When you see the little ad, you will only get notifications when you get mentioned explicitly. So whenever someone writes @Job something something, then I will get an email. This is, for instance, important for Dimitri, who gets a lot of email from GitLab.com and all the different GitLab repositories where he's active in almost everything and always gets mentioned, and people always add him to every commit and to every issue, and it would be undoable for him to always get an email for each update in every single issue. So in this case, you will only get an email whenever he's mentioned. That was a lot to talk. Any questions about this?
Yeah, I'm unclear on the difference between global versus watch. So it sounds like watch, you get notified on everything. So what's the difference between global and watch?
Global is the setting that you set for all other projects. So it's not a different level. It's just, It goes to your default.
Gotcha.
It's maybe something we should improve because I don't think it's that clear either. There's another little button here which allows you to create new things, new issue, merge request, branch, or tag. We'll talk about SSH and HTTP later. I want to show you the other features of GitLab 8. Another nice one is you may have already probably played around with the interface of GitLab and maybe even edited the file. Nowadays, you can also add files like this, but rather than files, you can also upload new files. And this is new in GitLab 8. So before, you could only create files, and you would say here your file name. But now it's also possible to just click upload and upload any file that you want to the repository and make a commit with that. And this makes that we get another step closer to the ultimate goal of being able to do everything you want within the interface of GitLab and never having to go to the terminal, which most developers do. And that's it. It's a really simple new feature. And I think I covered the most important features. Oh yeah, the email features I should show you. So because we have this whole system around notification being always emails, we wanted to add some functionality to those emails. Because how it was before is that you would get a notification. In the notification is a link. You have to go to GitLab. And then in GitLab, you would reply and do your thing. Of course, this takes a whole step. And especially if on some days when GitLab is slow, going all the way to GitLab and then replying there can be bothersome, and it just takes you time. So what we did is that we added a feature where you can, whenever you see an issue, so this is a notification I got because Ashley created an issue on a repository where she mentioned me. And rather than having to click the link and saying, oh, view this in GitLab, what I can do is I can simply reply to the email and a comment will appear in GitLab. Really simple feature, and it works extremely powerful because you can now just on your phone or on your Apple Watch, you can press reply and it will end up in GitLab. There's another one where we've set up GitLab, and this takes a lot of work. So this doesn't always make sense for our customers to do, but it is nice, is that we now have these quick buttons in Gmail. So if you're using Gmail and you set up this whole process with Google, you can have these really nice little buttons in your inbox that immediately leads to the merge request or the commit. Okay, I think those were the main. Yeah.
Yeah. Do any of our competitors, direct competitors, have this email function as well as the integration of a CI tool? So like GitLab and Atlassian, all those, or GitHub and Atlassian and so forth.
Yeah, I think they all have the reply to email feature. I think we're a little bit late with that. They all integrate with CI tools. So just like GitLab also integrates with Jenkins and anything you basically set it up with, GitHub has integrations with every single CI tool that exists on the planet, but it's still a separate application. So you will get the status of your build. So whenever you create a merge request in GitLab, you will get the status of the build of that merge request. That same thing happens in GitLab, and that same thing is available in GitLab. The difference is that now the CI tool is in GitLab. So the big advantage of this comes with the next release, where it's all weaved together. But there's another advantage, which is you have only one tool to set up. So rather than having to have one server where you have your CI set up, one server where you have GitLab set up, it's now a single thing. It comes with a package. It's not, you don't have to do any configuration. You install GitLab, it's a fresh install, you're done. You just have to add these runners that execute your tests, but that would go for any CI service. So that is the difference. Yes, the competitors integrate also with CI, but none of them comes with a CI built in.
Okay. The last one's a good one, implementation like savings, one tool to set up. So it's good benefit there.
Yeah, and it's the same, right? So a lot of these, if you have Jenkins, you can run it on your own servers. Many of these are not offered as such, or they can be hard to set up. And now you have the same options as you always had with GitLab in terms of high availability and such. You have with GitLab CI, and it just comes with it. There's no extra setup. It's really nice, and it's with the next release, it's going to prove itself. It's worth 3 times, and over time, it's going to prove its worth. Because it makes sense. When you think about it, it makes total sense. And we have a lot of these tools right now, like, for instance, the chat tool, Rocket Chat, and Mattermost, which we bundle with GitLab, that it's all different tools, but it makes sense if they would all be together, because in the end, we're all working together on the same thing, on the same platform. So yeah, everything should be there. It's just a matter that so far no one was able to create so many good things together and put them all in the same package. Okay, I did the most. Of course, I already told you this, that one of the most important features, and I said this many times, the whole design of GitLab has been upgraded immensely. So almost every UI element that you see has been changed in comparison to the last version of GitLab of only a month ago, and it just looks much better. It looks better and it works better, and we've been thinking more about the layout. Andre is doing nothing else but working on the way GitLab looks, which is really, really nice, and I think it really pays off. That is the most of the things of GitLab 8.
One thing in there, yeah, you mentioned disk space. So just for the sake of being clear for everyone in my own education, so I get the 50% disk space savings. Is that speed savings? Is it?
Oh, that's a good one, Chad. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. So GitLab used to use satellites, and satellites are basically copies of the repositories that you're using so that we can perform some actions on it. It has a technical reason. It doesn't really matter because we removed them in GitLab 8, which means that the space that they would previously take in is now free to use. And they are not actually removed from your system yet. It will happen in the next upgrade. But for new projects, they are not created, and nor are they amended in any way. This means that, yes, you get this space, and say that you are using all your repositories to the fullest. If you remove all your satellites, that means you free up 50% of your disk space. And another advantage is that it does speed up GitLab, and in particular, it speeds up merges. So if you're trying to merge really big change sets into big repositories, that could take a really long time, or even time out in GitLab. And that's much less likely to happen, and it will happen all much faster because we have only this single place where we do all the operations. Something which, by the way, you can say of every release of GitLab is that everything is a little bit faster. So every release we're working on making things a little bit better, making them a little bit more efficient. So this is a continuous thing, and I think we mentioned it in almost every blog post that we've written so far.
Great.
See, quick open. Yeah, we changed some things in the front end regarding HTTP support. HTTP is one of the two protocols that you can use with GitLab to do your Git actions, and HTTP traditionally used to be a little bit less reliable than SSH. We'll go more into it later, but we now replaced what we use there with our own solution, which is much more stable, and it is able to handle bigger pushes. And as you know, we ship Mattermost with GitLab. And Mattermost is an alternative to Slack. It looks the same, and we just upgraded it to the latest beta, and it brings some changes with itself as well. For sake of being very complete, I can show you this. So in GitLab, we have, with every project, webhooks. Webhooks are things that get triggered when something happens. That sounds really vague. It's a little text file, a little piece of text with information about the project and the status of the project and the commits that are happening, etc. Richard, can you mute yourself? Thanks. I was hearing myself. A webhook is it's a little piece of text with some information, and it gets sent to wherever you want. So you can send it to a certain URL where you maybe have a sort of script running that responds in a certain way to that piece of text that you get sent. And in GitLab, you can choose what kind of event, what triggers a webhook to get sent. For instance, on a push. So if I push commit, whenever I do a new push, GitLab will send this little piece of text to this URL, in this case, example.com/triggerci.json. And that can happen on different types of events. What we added in GitLab 8 is that the SSL verification that checks whether you have a secure connection, that's turned on by default. It means that if it's not able to make a secure connection using HTTPS, it will not execute the webhook and actually share this information. I don't know if this is clear, because I know that it sounds really, really abstract. So please ask me a question if you do not understand this.
What's a good use case, Job? What's the most common use case for a webhook, for example?
If you have an integration, if you want to integrate something with GitLab that we do not support, but you still want to be able to, for instance, get information of GitLab on certain events, this would be the right way. Let's say you want to let's say every time someone comments in a certain project, you want a message to be put in Slack. You can put the URL of Slack here, and you say on comments, send a webhook, and then you just have to set up Slack in a way that it knows how to parse that little message that we sent, and then it can use that information. And then it will include the information of the comment. Another one is, for instance, whenever a new issue is created, we send a message to Zendesk to then do something with that.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
So that functionality, if we had with Jira integration, you could have anything that came through Jira integration, you could have it configured with the issue number in there as well, coming through into Slack, or That's the sort of thing. The company I used to work for used to have that issues coming through, Jira issues coming through on HipChat. Could we do that with this functionality here?
No. You would. So if you would just want to have something from Jira to your Slack or HipChat, then you would do that in Jira, and they have a similar function there, which is also probably called webhooks, or even an integration. Regarding the Jira integration in GitLab, and then this, well, the answer is no. It doesn't relate to our Jira integration, but we could have that if you like the example that I gave before. Whenever there's a comment, we would push to Slack. Well, if you would have the Jira integration, you would see the same thing. You would see the Jira comments that you set up, but it's separate from that. Does that make sense, Richard?
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, I will wanted to talk a little bit about LDAP. Oh, that's going to fill the rest of the hour, I think. So GitLab CE is the free edition, and everyone uses that. And we always say that, well, one of the reasons to upgrade to GitLab Enterprise Edition is because you get all these awesome LDAP features, and LDAP this and LDAP that, and sometimes we say Active Directory, and sometimes we say Active Directory and LDAP in the same sentence. So what is LDAP? And why is it so important to enterprise? So the first thing you should know is that we do support LDAP in Community Edition, but not as well as in Enterprise Edition. So don't confuse that. And the second thing is, what is it? LDAP is a protocol, meaning it's a way for computers and networks to talk to each other. And it's a protocol that defines a certain structure and a way of communication of a little database. It's called a directory. And it's specifically made or especially used for cases where you want to share credentials and personal information. And this is what pretty much everyone uses it for.
Sorry to jump in again. You said that in the Community Edition we do support it, but we don't really support it, or don't support it so much. So that's quite confusing. So we're trying to convince people to move from CE to EE. And we're going to say, well, I know you've got a bit of support, but you didn't really get proper support for LDAP. So can you just define the different level of support between the CE version and the EE version, please?
Yes, I was going to that. So what you do in LDAP on an abstract level is you put in your people. So you say, I have Josh here and I have Richard here in my LDAP. And Josh and Richard set their own password there, and there's a little app they have somewhere or some way to configure that. And what it allows me to is to connect different applications that are able to handle LDAP to my LDAP server or Active Directory, which is the same thing but for Microsoft. So I can connect these different applications to LDAP, and because I do that, you can all log in with the same credentials to all those different things. So maybe if you worked in a big corporation or university or in a school, they often use LDAP. And it allows you to, with the same username and the same password, to log in all the applications that you're running there. You can log into Salesforce, you can log into Gmail, you can log into the internal applications, and you can all use the same credentials. And that is the basic functionality, and that is why people use LDAP, because they want to be able to offer that. First and foremost. And the second is that what you do, rather than just creating a bunch of people, is you organize them. And you can organize them in any sort of manner that you want. You can create directories, groups, subdirectories, subgroups, subgroups. And because you're doing this, you have the power so you just organize them arbitrarily however you want. And because you do this, you can then say to the applications that make use of LDAP, I want this group of people to be able to do this and this and that. And this other group of people, they can only do this and that. And this is what the trick of LDAP, and this is why it's so interesting. Say that, well, we have a bunch of developers and we have a bunch of salespeople. The salespeople all have to have access to Salesforce, and the developers all have to have access to all the source code. But we do not want the groups to mix and have developers having access to Salesforce. So what you can do is every time someone comes in, you put them in your LDAP and you assign them to the correct group or multiple groups. And the only thing you have to do is you have to say in Salesforce, of my LDAP group, of all my LDAP groups, I only want salespeople to have access to this. And you say in your GitLab, you say, I want all my developers to have access to this. And this instantly, you don't have to configure anything anymore because they are in that group, and that application will check your LDAP. Oh, whenever this person tries to log in, do they exist? Yes or no? Are they in the correct group? Yes or no? And then depending on which group they are, I will give them certain permissions and let them in. This is what LDAP does. So, to recap, LDAP allows you to sort people in groups and then connect applications to LDAP.
GitLab. So, Job, quick question. I understand that this is a big differentiator for us against GitHub. Could you go into that a little bit and talk about that?
Yes, I'm going now. So GitLab CE allows you to connect your LDAP server to GitLab, and you can log in with that. And that's it. There's nothing more. You cannot define permissions. You cannot set anything. GitLab EE, and GitLab EE also adds the differentiator with GitHub, and it's also the reason why people buy GitLab EE. It allows you to set permissions to groups and projects and multiple groups and multiple permissions based on those LDAP groups that I was talking on before. And it allows you to do this extremely flexible. And I'm just going to show you in the interface, which will give you a better idea of how it will work. So I'm here on my server, and I'm using my own server because this one is actually set up with LDAP. And I will go into my awesome group. Here I can go into settings. And here you see a little link that says LDAP groups. So the power of GitLab EE is, and specifically LDAP, is that one, you can connect multiple LDAP servers. So extremely large corporations, such as many of our clients, they actually, I have to disable my camera. They actually allow you to, they actually have multiple LDAP servers running. For instance, if they take over another organization or another company, they often just take their entire LDAP server and they do not change it. And they just say, okay, we're going to give these people here and here access. So you can set up multiple LDAP servers. And then, and let me unlink these to show you how it works. Oh, that's a bug. And then what you can do, I have to refresh. And then what you can do is you can search for a group. So in this case, I have a security group. And I can say that for all the people that are in this group, so let's say that to this group, I've added all the people with the highest level of security access, I can immediately set their permissions for this GitLab, for this group in GitLab. So all the projects under Awesome Group, the people that are in the security group, they automatically get whichever permission I set here. So let's say developer. And once this is done, and this is not great, this is a bug in GitLab. And once this is done, this means that I can have multiple LDAP groups synced to a single GitLab group and give them different permissions. And this makes it extremely easy to set very complex permission schemes over really big organizations really, really quickly. Because I can just say, oh, I want this group of people, they should have access to all these projects with this specific permission level. Well, that's as much as clicking twice in GitLab and setting it here. So in this case, everyone in the distribution group has master level permission to all the projects in Awesome Group, and the security group developer level permission to all the projects in this same group. And you can do this with as many groups as you want in GitLab and in any configuration that you want. An additional thing I can do is I can say in the configuration of GitLab, which is not here in the interface, but in a little file, I can say a specific group in my LDAP, they can be the administrators. So you always want the administrator, you only want to have a few administrators for each GitLab instance because they have the power to see everything and delete everything. But you can do that through LDAP, and you can do that in Enterprise Edition, which is really, really convenient because there's a really easy way. It's much easier usually for a big enterprise to manage their LDAP than to manage the permissions on all their applications, GitLab included. And if they do it like this, they don't have to worry about this anymore. And in fact, we've made it so powerful that we added a setting to GitLab, which disallows you from changing permissions very easily for users, and rather you have to use only LDAP to manage these groups. Are there any questions about this?
So
what can't GitHub do with LDAP?
So I'm not completely up to date because we don't have our own GitHub Enterprise Edition server running, and their online version you can't use your own LDAP. But as far as I know, you cannot do these kind of things where you have multiple groups sync to a single group with different permission levels. This is certainly something you cannot do in GitHub. And the way that you manage permissions in GitHub is a little bit more confusing than in GitLab. GitLab is quite simple. You have groups. Under groups, you have projects, and that's it. And we have multiple permissions. And in GitHub, there's not that many options to easily configure that as we do in GitLab.
What if a client has moved to one of the cloud solutions like Okta or OneLogin for their permissioning? Does that make it easier to use GitHub, or is it still the same issues present?
Well, you won't have the advantage, obviously, of LDAP. If you use one of those solutions, we should implement that. And we just implemented Atlassian Crowd, which is something similar. But yeah, for now, if we don't support it, yeah, they are not able to use it.
So just playing back, Yob, the problem, either the known problem or the unknown problem, I guess a medium or larger business was use LDAP. At least that's what I was reading before. But right now, if they're using LDAP, the problem we're solving for, or could solve for them, is helping them provide permission levels on certain for the certain groups. Correct. So yes, right now. If there's someone's using LDAP and they have, like in your case, a distribution group, a sales group, a security group, whatever groups they do, they all see the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
And then with us, I could show part of the project, part to one group and next group and next group. So like in Salesforce.com, for those that are familiar, like there's roles and there's permission levels that can go with that. So there's certain things you can see or do in Salesforce.com. I think that'd be the same thing for this.
Yeah, I think, so you have this permission organization already in GitLab. So that is not unique to the LDAP part. The unique part is that you don't have to manage people within GitLab anymore. So you set this up once. You can set this up ahead of time. And anyone, have a fresh GitLab instance, anyone that logs in will automatically have the correct permissions to everything because it's dependent on their LDAP. So they can log in with their LDAP, so with their trusted username, with their trusted password. They log in, They immediately have access to everyone. You have a new person coming into the company. First thing you always do in a big organization is you create their LDAP account. And from that moment on, in GitLab at least, they will have access to the things they should have access to, and they will not be able to see the other things that they shouldn't. Any other questions about this? So I said this before, but it's good for you to know. LDAP is the name of the protocol. You also hear about Active Directory. GitLab also supports Active Directory. Active Directory implements LDAP, meaning it's basically the same thing, and it adds some fancy features, some of which we support, but we support LDAP, Active Directory. To us, it's the same thing, and we call it LDAP everywhere. All right. Any other questions about the things we discussed today? The hour is almost over.
Everyone's good? Blown away with all the new intelligence.
So I created a little a set of questions, and Chat will look them over. But if you think they are great, then I will send them all to you as homework of last week, and I will do the same with the things we covered this week. So you can test it. We can see if you actually listened and actually understand it. You'll be forced to ask more questions next time.
I'll put the disclaimer out there. I'm purposely going to miss a lot of these questions, Job.
You just have to. That's fine. That's fine. The point is that I understand where things are going wrong, because I've been thinking nothing else but Git and GitLab for the last 2 years. So to me, it all makes total sense. So it's important that I get an idea what everyone is not understanding.
Yeah, I think that was a great point. And for the sales team, Job and I have talked about this, is learning is about understanding, be able to apply. And I heard from every single one of you in our one-on-ones, like, okay, layman terms, like how do I take that to the buyer and have them understand it, or how can I understand it? So that's what we're really trying to test. Not did you get an A or a B or a C in terms of American grading system here, but are you really learning it? Where do we need to dig down deeper? Where do we need to change up the communication? So, perfect, Job. I appreciate it. I will take that test and make sure I study for it before I take the test.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just about what an LDAP server is. Is it anything special? Is it just simply a server that just has the group members or the information of the people on there?
Yeah, that's basically it. It's just a piece of software that you put somewhere.
Cool.
You can see it like a database.
Once again, Job, we really appreciate the time and the information. And we'll look forward to, I'll work with you on how best to publish these recordings so we can always refer to them.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for listening. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great night.
Thank you. See you.